Hey, folks. Today's episode brought to you by one of our sponsors, Cedar Seeds, if you can imagine. Yes, I've told this story a couple of times now, but somebody gave me some cannabis seeds, and I figured I'd give it a try to grow it. It's legal in New York State to grow 6 of your own plants. I did. They got huge. They were like 10 feet tall, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this. And then I found out that you're supposed to sex the plants, meaning some are male and some are female. If you don't take all the males out, then all you get is seeds. And so my buddy came to me. He's like, you can actually, we should sell these. And so now we are. It's Cedars Seeds, SEDERS, seeds.com. Head over there and check out. We got, I guess, 5 different strains. Emma was talking about, what was it that you were talking about yesterday?
Yeah, let me, it's the one with the, tank engine.
Tank engine.
Thomas the Tank Engine with some pink eyes, right? Some red eyes.
Well, I like Maestro. It doesn't matter what it is. These things are outdoor seeds. They grow great. Check it out. And all you got to do, right over here. Right.
Nope. Other way.
Yeah, whatever. Just you can click on the QR code right there. Check it out. Cedars Seeds. Use the coupon code SEEDS. You get free shipping in addition to the Majority Report discount of 15% that's already there automatically. Check it out.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, 34 felonies, no mugshot, and a self-requested perp walk await Donald Trump in New York City today. Meanwhile, John Nichols from The Nation magazine will join us to talk about the crucial election in Wisconsin and in Chicago. That one in Chicago to elect a new mayor, in Wisconsin to elect a new state Supreme Court justice. Also, the great Medicaid purge begins, costing perhaps millions of people health insurance. Federal judge says the Willow Project construction can continue during ongoing lawsuits. Florida Senate passes a 6-week abortion ban. Mississippi lawmakers pass a provision to provide unelected judges specifically and only for Jackson, Mississippi.
What's different about that area of the state?
Tennessee Republicans start expulsion of 3 Democratic lawmakers for advocating for gun reform. Finland officially enters NATO. And a court orders Elon Musk to delete a tweet threatening Tesla workers who attempt to unionize. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday.
Newsday. Oh, sorry. Jump the gun.
As my co-host says, Tuesday Newsday. We're way
come on. I'm
here.
Just excited. It's a big day, and
it's a big day.
And
you got to adjust yours thing here a little bit too, because mine's.
Me?
Yep. We're way off here today. I don't know what it. There you go. Just widen out a little bit and drop. There you go. Okay, there we go.
That good?
Yep.
Wait, no, it's not. All right, there we go. All right, there we go.
I can't help it if you're short.
No, I mean, my head looks 3 times the size of your head when you do this. Like, I feel like I framed it right. Our heads are looking normal sizes, and it's just you mess with it every time. It's fine, but I can deal with it because great day today. Why does that judge hate Elon's free speech? Right?
I can't wait to see the judge files on that. But let's go right into this. We're going to be talking to John Nichols in a bit about the Wisconsin race and the Chicago mayor's race. Arguably, I think, no, not even arguably. I think it's, pretty clearly these elections are more important as to what happens in the country than what happens today in New York City. The charges against Trump are not going to, more than likely, not land him in jail. It's probably just the beginning of some charges against him that we may see out of Georgia, perhaps out of Washington, D.C. We'll see about that. We don't know exactly what those charges are. Reports are that he will not be handcuffed. He will not get a mug shot. Most people, I think, feel like his flight risk is minimal. And there's also, apparently, from the reporting that I've read, he was offered the opportunity to be arraigned either at night. Secret Service wanted to do that because it would have been safer, obviously, and less of a crap show. There was also an opportunity for him to be arraigned over Zoom, and he didn't want that. He wanted the show, and so we will do some clips in a moment about that. But here is Bernie Sanders. This was him just last week at a rally for Brandon Johnson in Chicago. This is this is basically the runoff, or I guess the general election for Chicago's mayor. I think they are electing other local officials as well today. This is a big deal because Brandon is running against a guy named Paul Vallis, who is about as sort of like corporate-y of a Democrat and sort of reactionary, arguably, of a Democrat.
He's in bed with the police union, right?
Yep.
And there's, just so you know, Chicago Teachers Union endorses Brandon Johnson. Paul Vallis in bed with the Chicago Police Union. And that kind of shows you where the battle lines are drawn.
Here's Sanders there last week supporting Johnson.
And it is great to come back to Chicago with so many friends and to see this extraordinary turnout tonight. And the reason I am here, the reason that you are here, is that we together are going to make sure that Brandon Johnson is the next mayor of this city. Before I get into some of the issues that have motivated me to be here, I want to make this point, that I know you've heard it before, but it's true. This is going to be a close election, and the deciding factor will be voter turnout. Now, Brandon's opponent and the other side, they have a lot of money. And that's what always happens when you take on the establishment. They have the money. They got a lot of power. But you know what we have? We have the people. They have the money, we have the people, and when the people stand united, people will win. So our job on Tuesday is to make sure we have the largest voter turnout this city has ever seen.
I mean, that's a pretty. It's a pretty big deal to have someone, I think, like Bernie Sanders come in for a mayoral race. Vallis has taken in more than $19 million in campaign contributions, is according to NBC Chicago. More than half of that, nearly $10 million, has come from just 44 people. Let that sit with you for a moment. You can do the math. Or organizations that have made six-figure donations. 15 of his donors, largely from the financial sector, have given him more than $250,000 apiece. They must really, really appreciate him.
Mm-hmm. They just love his personality. He really is a sunny guy. He's tried to run for office in Chicago many a time, and I think there's this. We spoke to Zach Siegel about this a few weeks back when the runoff results came in. There's seemingly this desire to capitalize on larger nationwide narratives about crime in cities. And Paul Vallis goes, "This is my time." And I think it's on the rest of the members, people voting in Chicago to say, no, it's not, because it's reactionary politics, and it's just not helpful for anybody to have like a broken windows style mayor in one of the three major cities in this country.
Without a doubt. And we should say that, Johnson, a lot of his support has come from unions. And hopefully we'll have some good results by tomorrow. Got a couple of sponsors for today's program. This one's a new one, and it is Roan Clothing. I had never heard of this, and before we ever run an ad for anybody, I'm like, well, I want to check this stuff out. Roan has this what they call commuter collection. Mm-hmm. It is, I have to say, I was a little skeptical of this type of I've never worn. I guess this is sort of like a millennial thing. But
I knew about it before you did, right?
Totally.
Because my boyfriend likes this stuff, and it's amazing to go to work because their commuter wear, as you say, it feels like athletic wear, and it never wrinkle. Not never, but it really doesn't wrinkle. But it looks like a classy shirt. That's
exactly it. Roan helps you get ready for any occasion with the commuter collection. It offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Roan commuter collection. It has a four-way stretch fabric. I don't know. I've never really understood what the four-way stretch means. It's stretchy.
Yeah. Well,
I guess I don't understand what that means. Four-way stretch.
Well, northwest.
There's only three dimensions, right?
Northwest, east, south. You just don't got to worry about stretching it out because it's again, it's that athletic wear material. This is the new cutting edge stuff here.
It really is. And apparently it also has something called Gold Fusion, which is an anti-odor technology, which you're going to be smelling fresh and clean all day. Helpful. Roan is 100% machine washable. So you don't have to go to the dry cleaner. But here's the thing is that the shirt, I got a pair of shirt and a pair of pants. I got a white shirt, a button down shirt, and it looks like a nice, white, cotton shirt, but it is significantly more comfortable. It does not wrinkle, like you say. To the extent there was a tiny wrinkle on it, I put it on. I had to go to a couple of, sadly, to a couple of situations where I wore a suit over the past couple of weeks. I've been wearing it there, and it looks, and here's the big test for me. I walked into the office of my sartorial critic, top, my stylist.
What?
Mila's room.
Oh.
And I was like, what do you think of the shirt? She goes, that's cool. You look good in that. And I did. And the pants. And here's the beauty. They don't wrinkle. And so I'm taking a trip next week, taking the kids. We're going to Europe. And this is what I'm packing. I've already ordered another shirt. And the pants are great too. It really, it really is impressive. I have been won over. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and then straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone, RHONE.com/Majority Report, one word, and use the promo code Majority Report. Save 20% off your entire order. It's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/one word Majority Report. Rhone.com/Majority Report. Use the code Majority Report. It is time to find your corner office comfort. Also, today's program sponsored by the same people who provide me with this every single day. Of course, I'm talking about Liquid IV. 1 stick of Liquid IV. It's a powder. In 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. There are 12 delicious, refreshing flavors. They range from pina colada to the one that I've been stuck on for forever now is the tangerine because of the immune support. But they also got like a matcha that's got it's like an energy drink. They got Concord grape and what else? You like the acai?
Well, I
right?
did try the pina colada. I'm sorry. I stole from you a little bit. I
That's all
tried
right.
one and it was very good. But yeah, still acai is my go-to.
It contains essential items like B3, B5, B6, B12, vitamin C, has 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients, all non-GMO, free from gluten, dairy, and soy. Liquid IV also partners with organizations to help communities protect their water and their futures, donating 39 million servings in 50 plus countries around the world. I mean, and it is great for travel. I'm going to take some on my trip. It's great if you've overdone it the night before, but it's great if you don't want to dehydrate when you take a long plane trip. And then, of course, every morning or afternoon, I start my day off with, sometimes I do 2 of these. Liquid IV, check it out. You can grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com. Use the code MajorityRep at checkout, not Majority Report, MajorityRep at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. And then lastly, one of our sponsors today, Henson Shaving. I don't shave that much. It's basically right here these days on both sides, but they're a great, it's a great razor. Henson Shaving, it's a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer. They have made parts for the International Space Station and Mars rover, and now they're bringing their precision engineering to your shaving experience. Look, I didn't want to deal with, when I grew a beard, I basically said, like, I'm not getting any more of that plastic stuff. I don't want to get involved in a subscription service or any of that stuff. And Henson has become my go-to razor. It turns out that the discomfort that people suffer, men and women, when they're shaving with disposable razors is not a function of the blade being sharp or not sharp or this and that. It's that it extends too far. Razor blades apparently are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more wobble and the more nicks and cuts and scrapes. It's an extension problem, not a blade problem. By using aerospace grade CNC machines, these are like computer something machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches, less than the thickness of a human hair. It means secure and stable blade with vibration-free shave. It gets better. The razor has built-in channels which allow you to evacuate hair and cream, makes it easy, clogging virtually impossible. No more banging on the side of your sink or using your thumb. And here's the thing, Henson Shaver wants to be the best razor, not the best razor business. That means you buy it once, no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, no planned obsolescence. The Henson razor works with standard dual edge blades, give you that old school straight razor shave with the benefits of new school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, they're only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. But they're giving my audience a 2-year supply of blades for free. Just go to hensonshaving.com/majority. That's HENSON shaving.com/majority. Add a razor and 100-pack of blades to your cart. Enter the code majority to get the blades for free. The link is in the description, both YouTube and podcast. All the links for today's sponsors are the Henson razor. Really just a cool piece of like equipment, as it were. So check that out. All right, let's get into the big news of the day. Wait, is Trump getting arraigned right now? Or I thought it was going to be at 2:15.
Well, 2:30 is the scheduled day, and then we were hearing that he was supposed to arrive at 11:30. I mean, there's just like a lot of ambiguity around it, so it's hard to say. But I mean, I know
All right, Bradley, well, you'll keep on it and let us know, right? Okay. In the meantime, it is an absolute circus in New York City today.
Lots of undercover cops just showing up and weirdos saying that they're Q, and then reporters.
Let's start with clip number 2. And these are pro and anti-Trump supporters that are gathered outside of the Manhattan criminal court. This is ahead of the arraignment. It turns out that there seems to be more anti-Trump protesters than pro-Trump protesters. Here they are. This is clip number 2.
I'm sorry.
A lot of reporters.
You're on the wrong side. You're on the wrong side. Yo, police! Police! Yo, police! I'm from New York. This is hilarious. Jack White! They're on the wrong side. They're on the wrong side. They're on the wrong side. Cut it out, guys. Get out of here, you old bag of bones. Get out of here, you old bag of bones. Get out. Tear this shit out. Enough of it. What happened to the party? I'm not Jewish, bitch. I'm from New York. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Violent communist agitators. Exactly. Probably indivisible USA, man. I just gave y'all what y'all want, right? Back off now. Back off. You got your thing. And now they're turning around, right? They saw the fun, and now they're
I mean, apparently, like one of the anti-Trump protesters put down a banner that said Trump lies all the time. I mean, really hard to argue with that. But apparently she did it on the wrong side of where they were. And you can hear, a nice mix of like of some anti-Semitic comments and some other really pleasant a group of people down there. And then, of course, this is an opportunity for every lunatic who is in the Trump orbit to show up. Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene, fresh off of her. I don't. What would you call what happened with Leslie Stahl on CBS a minute? Like her reformation. Yeah. Essentially.
Let me just before we get to this clip, just say screw 60 Minutes and Leslie Stahl for that embarrassment of an interview where there was a moment where Marjorie Taylor Greene said, quote, the Democrats are a party of pedophiles, then also said Joe Biden, quote, supports children being sexualized. And Leslie Stahl's follow-up was, can you just stop with the name calling? And then they went into a montage about how committed she is to CrossFit. So I mean, we're normalizing this woman who tried to overturn the democratic results of an election and believes that school shootings were false flags and that there are Jewish space lasers controlling everybody. And like, it's hard to watch that interview and come away with anything except for like, maybe someone saw it and thought, hey, she's not as bad as I thought, because that's the only outcome possible with that interview in terms of needle moving. With that said,
and let's be clear. I have no issue with somebody interviewing really anybody on their show. I mean, if you're in if you're a journalist, and I don't think that there's necessarily something wrong with the act in and of itself of platforming, particularly someone who is a congressperson. I mean, she doesn't. It's not a question of being platformed with Marjorie Taylor Greene. It is a question of being represented in a way that is that is accurate as to how you got into that seat. And the way that she got into that seat, by any accounting, has to include things like, the Jewish, weather machine that they have, or space lasers, or the harassment of AOC, or all of these things are why she is where she is today. You are doing a disservice by not making that clear, by not having the people who watch this interview walk away with that understanding. Everybody name calls in politics. Not everybody who gets to take the gavel over for Kevin McCarthy has accused Jews of having space lasers.
Yeah. And the thing is Stahl gave lip service to some of those things in the interview, but they were not the primary focus of it. It was really what that format is in 60 Minutes is a walk and talk humanization vehicle.
Yep.
And that is not, there are one-on-one interviews that can be incredibly adversarial. We've been seeing it go viral with Jon Stewart on weekly, but the reason that was selected was because the nature of that one-on-one interview is not adversarial. It really has never been. So, I thought that was unconscionable, but here she is back doing her thing in New York, rallying for Trump and saying nonsense.
Here she is, interviewed on Right Side Broadcast. I think this is by her boyfriend, right? She said,
yes.
Right? Or is that okay? Her boyfriend's interviewing.
So I wasn't sure.
He's almost he's almost a little tougher on her than Leslie Stahl. Let's go.
President Trump is joining some of the most incredible people in history being arrested today. Nelson Mandela was arrested, served time in prison. Jesus was arrested and murdered by the Roman government. There have been many people throughout history that have been arrested and persecuted by radical, corrupt governments. And it's beginning today in New York City. And I just can't believe it's happening, but I'll always support him. He's done nothing wrong.
You think they carpooled?
Jesus and Nelson Mandela. I am so sad that Michael's not here for this.
Perfect tee up for right-wing Mandela here, Bob.
Jesus and Nelson Mandela have gone to prison. There's others too. There's a whole, Gandhi, I believe, was arrested. Am I mistaken about that?
Martin Luther King, but that might be a little bit raw for some of her voters in Georgia, so she doesn't want to bring that up.
Well, Mandela was, but maybe she's hoping that some of her voters don't really know who Mandela is. They've just heard the name, perhaps.
Yeah.
For that, Malcolm X was in prison, and not necessarily as Malcolm X per se, or I guess he didn't go in as Malcolm X. Let's put it that way. Who else?
Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff also went into prison. Yeah.
Yeah. Many wonderful people throughout history. And honestly, you could say it's a rainbow coalition of people who are great people and also horrible people who have all gone to prison. And so to paint them with the brush that she's choosing to, that's a choice.
It is pretty amazing. We should also say, to be fair, Hitler also went to prison, and for a putsch that not necessarily too different from January 6th. Yeah. So there's opportunities. She chose to go with Jesus and Mandela.
How about Jeffrey Epstein, Marge?
He also went to prison. There's a lot of people she could have used. Yeah. Ted Bundy, I'm reminded. But there it is. And like I say, this was just a parade of Trump clown posse, I guess you could say. And of course, when there's an opportunity for someone to get some publicity, you know that this guy, Alan Dershowitz, is not going to be far away. And we also know it's going to be really about how he is being persecuted.
Yeah, just real quick in the last 30 seconds I have. I don't understand. If that first motion says motion to dismiss on statute of limitations, doesn't the judge have to say, hey, look, the statute of limitations is 2 years for bookkeeping in a misdemeanor. This exceeds 2 years. I have to dismiss.
No, because the judge doesn't want to be Dershowitz. Remember what happened to me when I defended President Trump on Martha's Vineyard? None of my friends would talk to me. No Democrats would talk to me. You can imagine a judge in Manhattan dismissing a case against Donald Trump. He'd never be spoken to again. His life would be ruined. Do you expect judges to be courageous? You might expect law professors to be courageous, but elected judges are never going to be courageous. There's no chance he gets a judge who has the ability and the willingness to confront the people of New York. Remember, the New York Times had a story yesterday saying that when Bragg initially decided not to indict, he was pilloried in New York. He was attacked.
Yeah.
Right.
Pressure, and he gave in. The judges will do the same thing.
Well, speaking of Jeffrey Epstein, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But there's Alan Dershowitz basically saying that, conceding that the way that judges function in our society and really indicting the entire legal system.
Mm-hmm.
There are some questions about statute of limitations. I mean, I think that's fair. Elie Mystal made an argument about that, but there are also some later provisions in that we don't know what these 34 felonies are, and it could involve some type of lying subsequent to the actual acts. I mean, it could be just the cover-up of the cover-up in the first place.
Yeah.
But we will have more information on this in a couple hours when more things become public about the arraignment.
And just one more thing about Alan Dershowitz. He says that Martha's Vineyard story without any sense of like irony or understanding that he was made into a national joke by complaining that he didn't have the same social life on Martha's Vineyard for defending Trump.
He was Dershowitz.
And like the inconsistency with Republicans, like DeSantis shipping migrants to Martha's Vineyard, like hell on earth for, that's where all the liberals go. And then Alan Dershowitz just still wants to be a part of that polite society. It really just goes to show that their complaints about liberals are not just about who they are or where they hang out. It's just that they're not included to those clubs.
Yeah, poor Alan Dershowitz.
I know.
Very sad. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, John Nichols, the national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine, on really the without a doubt more important goings on this Tuesday. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland. Joining us now, John Nichols, national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine. John, welcome back to the program.
It's great to be with you both.
So, John, let's, we were just saying this a little bit in the virtual green room, but all the attention today, at least in the national media for the most part, is going to be focused on the circus in Manhattan as Donald Trump gets arraigned. But really, the things that are happening today in Wisconsin and in Chicago, far more important, aren't they?
I happen to think so, because I think that, look, I've written books about presidential accountability. And so I treat very seriously the efforts to hold Donald Trump to account. And I think that's a big deal. But I think when you're doing wall-to-wall coverage of a procedural moment rather than the real story of whether he is in fact ultimately held to account, that is you get to a point where you begin to push out all other news. And to my view, on this day, the really big news doesn't happen to be in New York. It doesn't happen to be in Washington. It happens to be in places that often are not covered well, but that ultimately decide what happens in Washington. And that is certainly true of the race in Wisconsin for Supreme Court and of the race for mayor of Chicago.
I think it was, I mean, it could be close to 12 years to the day. When this show started, this iteration of this show started in late November. Late 2010, like November 2010. Mm-hmm. And I think it was around this time in 2011, I went out to Madison. I think maybe it was a little bit earlier in the year. Maybe it was in March or something like that to cover and I remember seeing you were all over the place there, sort of almost like an unofficial mayor, as there were massive protests against the rollback of unionization rights and the rollback of Badger Care and all sorts of things that Scott Walker had just come in, funded by the Koch brothers and the AFP, and was taking a meat cleaver to Wisconsin politics. And this is a very progressive state where, I don't know, like arguably one of the sort of like, I don't know if it's the birthplace of unionization in the country, but one of the most like historically unionized unions were super important in this country. And here we are again, like, tell us what the implications are of this Supreme Court race that is happening right now. I mean, so if you're in Wisconsin, you can listen to this for a couple of minutes, but then go vote.
That's exactly right. In fact, you listen right to the end, and then there's still going to be about 8 more hours for voting. So, but don't miss out. Look, you set it up well, Sam. That is the place to go back to. If you go back to November of 2010, which was the Tea Party election, right? That was the election where Republicans really asserted themselves in Washington, but even more so in the states. And Wisconsin was a first among equals in that November 2010 election because Republicans swept to control the governorship with Scott Walker and control of both houses of the state legislature. They also, by the way, through conservatives on the high court, had control of the judiciary. So in November of 2010, Republicans got complete control of Wisconsin, and they used that control to gut labor laws, some of which went back, more than half a century. You're right. Wisconsin was a leader in labor rights, to gut a lot of our protections for voting, things that made it easy to vote. Wisconsin always a leader in voting, and those protections rooting back to the progressive era, and to undermine, all sorts of structures that had been in place. They made it harder to vote. They made it harder for unions and for other groups to be engaged. And so you really saw an effort to transform Wisconsin. The biggest thing they did was gerrymander the state radically so that they wouldn't lose power in the legislature. And they haven't since then. So, Sam, let me explain now what the consequences are today in the Supreme Court race. Since 2011, January of 2011, when that new Republican majority came in, Democrats, or progressives, let's say progressives, because the court is officially nonpartisan, have not controlled more than one branch of government. In this case, it's been the executive branch, the governorship, which under Tony Evers they currently have. They've never had two in that whole period. As of tonight, if Judge Janet Protasiewicz, a progressive, is elected to the Supreme Court, the balance on the Supreme Court will tip to a 4-3 liberal balance, and progressives will control two branches of government. If they do, they then usher in an era where you can begin to undo the damage that was done by Scott Walker. So this is a 12-year struggle. You imagine, how long some of these people who've been at it, a 12-year struggle that could tonight take a radical turn toward a much more progressive direction. And that's big for Wisconsin. It's also big for the United States because Wisconsin is the most closely divided battleground state in the country. 6 of our last 6 presidential elections, 4 were decided by under 25,000 votes. And so this is a state where fights for the presidency are played out at the closest level, and who controls that Supreme Court will have a definitional role in deciding how the 2024 presidential race plays out in this state.
And Wisconsin at that time, and because, you know, it was so closely associated with the Koch brothers. I mean, Scott Walker was essentially the Koch brothers project.
Yes.
The AFP, they basically said, I mean, Wisconsin was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I probably know this because you and I have talked about it. You probably told me this in the past. Wisconsin was sort of the laboratory. It was like, this is where we're going to run the pilot program and see if this is going to be something that we can export to other states. This is like every ALEC piece of legislation that was ever written. We're going to try it first in Wisconsin. And one of the things that the Republicans have done and sort of like innovated in Wisconsin, right? Like you mentioned the gerrymandering, and we should say that was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Thomas Hofeller, who's considered the godfather of Republican gerrymandering. This was one of the first places he rolled it out where they had the technology to sort of get down to the point where, and you can tell us the numbers about how just sort of like how completely warped democracy is there. But Republicans have always been very good at being disciplined about getting into office, and their first moves are always not about like, we're going to cut taxes, we're going to do that. Their first moves are always like, what can we do to enhance our ability to get elected in the future? And that means cutting union power. That means gerrymandering. They, when Evers gets elected, they just cut his authority. And then we see that happen in North Carolina. We see these things, these things sort of exported around the country. Give us a sense of just how warped democracy is in Wisconsin because of those gerrymandering.
Well, Sam, you've learned your Wisconsin lessons well. Wisconsin
at your feet, essentially.
I don't know. Wisconsin has historically been referred to as the laboratory of democracy. Going back more than a century, it's the state where innovations, frankly, on the right and the left, have come from. Wisconsin leading on workers' comp and protections for women in the workplace, voting rights, all sorts of things. But then when the Republicans came to power, you're right. They came in and they did a lot of their playbook right away. They disempowered the trial lawyers, a group that often supports Democrats. They disempowered unions, a group that usually supports Democrats. They disempowered all sorts of other groupings around the states. They changed the election dates for primaries so that the election dates for primaries would occur in the summer when students are not at university. I mean, you just run down the list. It's endless. And so they did all this, and it worked, especially the gerrymandering worked. In 2008, the Democrats won a solid majority in the state legislature. In 2010, they lost it. That was a very normal pattern in Wisconsin. Wins and losses, the legislature flipping back and forth. Since 2010, when the Republicans took charge and they then gerrymandered the maps, the Democrats have not controlled the legislature. And in fact, this is to give you an example. In several election cycles, Democrats won statewide, sometimes very, very comfortably by large margins. They even won the cumulative vote for the state legislature, and yet they did not only didn't they get control of the legislature was almost 2/3 Republican. So understand that. The majority of people who go to vote for state legislators vote for Democrats, and yet Republicans come out with a 2/3 majority, or virtually 2/3 majority. That is gerrymandering in the extreme, and it has lasted no matter what. When Barack Obama won Wisconsin overwhelmingly in 2012, Republicans still kept their majority. In 2018, when Democrats won every statewide race, senator, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, state treasurer, attorney general, they won every statewide race, Republicans maintained the same level of control in the legislature. So that's the thing to understand here, is that the gerrymandering has given them, basically a free pass. And then the key to the Supreme Court race today, why today's Supreme Court race matters so much, is that in 2018 and then again in 2022, Tony Evers won for governor. Once Tony Evers won for governor, in the traditional model, you would have had a division between the Democratic governor, Republican legislature. They would have sorted out legislative district maps and congressional maps. It would have been a compromise. Instead, the Republicans refused to compromise. Even when Evers tried to, the case got thrown into the Supreme Court, where conservatives who are closely aligned to the Republicans had control of the maps, and they effectively drew maps that maintained the same Republican control. The only thing that will undo this, the only thing that will move Wisconsin back toward an actual democracy, where wherever you live, your vote has some meaning and it counts, is if the court flips tonight. If you get a 4-3 liberal majority on that court and a case challenging the gerrymandered maps comes up, if that court revisits it and draws new fair maps, not gerrymandered maps, but fair maps where there's real competition, then suddenly you could have a situation much like what happened in Michigan when they got rid of their gerrymandered maps and Democrats take control of the governorship, other statewide offices, and the legislature. And notably in Michigan, just in recent weeks, they've gotten rid of their right to work law. They've gotten rid of their other anti-labor laws. They began to push major civil rights and women's rights protections, including on abortion rights. All of that becomes possible if the court flips tonight.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Go ahead, Sam, though.
Well, we should say Michigan also a battleground state. I mean,
Yeah,
so
same model.
This race has implications. I mean, that's why it has both implications in terms of like nationally. It's also like a bellwether, and it's going to give us an assessment of like, how, where the coalition that will elect the progressive stands. I mean, that's what's so fascinating about Wisconsin.
And let me throw one more thing into the mix. Not only are the legislative district maps gerrymandered, so are the congressional district maps. Wisconsin used to send a mixed congressional delegation, usually a little more Democratic in many years. Now the delegation is 6-2 Republican, overwhelmingly Republican. With fair maps for congressional districts, you could have as many as 2, maybe even on an outside chance, 3 new Democratic members of Congress. Look at how closely the House of Representatives is divided right now. Wisconsin, if there were fair maps, could play a critical role in 2024 in flipping control of the House back to the Democrats. That's how much is at stake.
And just in terms of the statewide implications for that abortion ban, I mean, it's not necessarily a trigger law, right? The 1849 abortion ban, but there's a challenge being leveled against it at this current moment. I mean, between right to work laws potentially codifying the right to an abortion within the state of Wisconsin, what else would be at the top in your estimation of the Democrats' priorities were they to take back the state government, and then much like in Michigan, you could kind of pass these agenda items through fairly immediately, making just congealing progressive priorities within the state.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Now, first off, remember the Supreme Court race is a officially nonpartisan race, but it's very clear who the Democratic Party's backing, who the Republican Party's backing. So right off the bat, if you got a 4-3 liberal majority on the state Supreme Court, they could probably take a case as regards our 1849 abortion law, and potentially that's the end of that law, right? So even before you get to redrawing maps, that's a huge deal for women's rights and reproductive rights in Wisconsin. They could theoretically also take cases involving Walker's anti-labor laws, particularly for public employees. Again, those laws were pushed by Walker, but they were sealed. The deal was sealed on the state Supreme Court. So if you can undo that, there are just things that can happen on the court itself that are fundamental. But if you then draw fair maps, if they're quickly drawn and they come into play for the 2024 election, then in that election, you have the possibility, not the guarantee, but the possibility that, like Michigan, Wisconsin could end up with a Democratic legislature, a Democratic governor. Then I think what you'd see very quickly is an overturning of the right to work law in Wisconsin, which is actually an anti-labor law, much like what happened in Michigan. And then I think you'd see something else which is really significant. There's been a chipping away at voting rights in Wisconsin. They moved, as I said, primary dates. They have made it harder to do many kinds of early voting. There have been all sorts of little assaults on voting rights. Many of them have been directed at students on college campuses across the state. Wisconsin has a lot of college campuses. So just reversing some of that, frankly, could have a fundamental impact on the 2024 presidential race, congressional races, and legislative races in Wisconsin. So you see very quickly some of those structural changes that begin to restore democracy. And remember, there have been some studies that say Wisconsin is less democratic than many countries around the world, which we do not look at as particularly healthy democracies. We've got a real mess in Wisconsin. So the simple restoration of voting rights, fair elections, fair maps is a huge deal. And then from that, you're right. And then, Emma, you get all the other things, right? You get better funding of the university, better funding of public education, fair deal on a whole bunch of environmental issues. It all comes together because Tony Evers, notably, is, I would argue, one of the 2 or 3 most progressive governors in Wisconsin. So give Governor Evers a legislature, and you've got, incredible possibilities.
And we should say also, I'm seeing from an IMer that there's a race in the 8th Senate District special election, which is one that could prevent the Republicans from getting a supermajority. Is that right?
Yes. And Sam, I'm so glad that you brought this up. I mean, I love this show because this is a show where we actually go a little deeper and get the actual story all laid out. And I won't go long on this because it's a bit complicated. But the simple reality is that in both houses of the legislature, Republican gerrymandered maps have brought them to the verge of a 2/3 majority. If they have a 2/3 majority, they can override Tony Evers' vetoes. Now, they don't have that in the assembly yet. So getting a 2/3 majority in the Senate wouldn't give them complete control, but it would put them in a position where just 1 or 2 Democratic members of the state assembly weren't there someday, they could push a law through, or they could push a veto override through. Senate could then kick it in. So it's a very tenuous situation there. But there's something bigger, Sam, and this is the biggest deal, and Emma as well. If the Republicans win the race in the special election, the 8th state Senate district, which is an open seat, if they win that seat, they will have 2/3 majority in the Senate. If they have 2/3 majority in the Senate, then the assembly, with just a 50-50 majority, just a 1 vote over 50, they don't have to have 2/3 there. The assembly could impeach an elected official in Wisconsin, say the Milwaukee County District Attorney, who they hate. And then the Senate could try and remove that official. So that's how big a deal this 1 seat is for the state Senate. It could allow the Republicans to commit even higher levels of abuses than we've seen up to this point. And there is a possibility that they might, for instance, target, as I said, the Milwaukee County District Attorney, John Chisholm. They might, who's been a rather progressive DA. They might also target Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, who was recently appointed. They didn't like the fact that she was appointed. They could theoretically go after her. They could actually even go after a judge on the Supreme Court.
Right.
So that's why, although this is race in the 8th district has not gotten a lot of national attention, it's a very big deal.
All right, let's turn to Chicago, because maybe not with the same national implications, but maybe you tell me, but certainly a big implications for Chicago, and also another sort of like bellwether to get a sense of what's happening with Democrats in, a major city in the country, and particularly one where the choice is so stark.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a starker choice than what we're seeing in Chicago. I wrote about it today for The Nation. And, it's a funny thing. We started out by saying we don't want to overemphasize Trump. We want to pay attention to this accountability moment and treat it very, very seriously, but look at other stories as well. Well, in fact, Trump is playing in a big way in Chicago because you have 2 candidates for mayor of Chicago. One, a progressive, Brandon Johnson, a teacher, union organizer, county commissioner, backed by labor, backed by progressives in labor, backed by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren at the national level, and by the real growing progressive bloc in Chicago on the city council, in the legislature, and among members of Congress like Delia Ramirez and Jonathan Jackson. So that's Brandon Johnson. His opponent, Paul Vallis, the former superintendent of schools in Chicago, and then later in Philadelphia and New Orleans. a neoliberal writ large, a guy who has backed school choice, a guy who has been on the corporate side of almost every issue. He claims to be a lifelong Democrat. He says that he's a lifelong Democrat. And yet, during Trump's impeachment 2 years ago, in a radio interview, he referred to that impeachment of Trump and the trying of Trump for high crimes and misdemeanors as a witch hunt. He also is funded.
Witch hunt is also like, it's one thing to say, I don't think it's, advise it, but the witch hunt, he's basically adopting Trump.
Oh, yeah. And if you read his comments from that day, I mean, it's quite clear he was playing to the right there. He once said, I'm more of a Republican than a Democrat, even though he says he's a lifelong Democrat. He is funded by corporate donors, many of whom have been major Republican donors. He's backed by the former Republican candidate for governor just in last year's election. And he has run on a kind of Republican-themed campaign, particularly emphasizing law and order in the kind of oldest Spiro Agnew, Richard Nixon kind of way. And so the division could not be clearer. Now, Vallis has an immense amount of money, and he has an immense amount of name recognition. So Brandon Johnson's had a very tough race. He's had to come from way behind. Apparently, the polls suggest that he's closed the gap, that it's essentially a tie today. If Brandon Johnson wins, it will be a win for a progressive agenda on economic and social and racial justice. He is a supporter of sensible police reforms that can actually, I think, have a real impact in Chicago. He's also a supporter of taxing the rich at a very substantial level and moving that money toward education, toward healthcare, transportation. He's running a much more green campaign, very sympathetic on environmental issues. So it's just a huge possibility for a shift. And I'll emphasize to you both, and both of you know your history so well. In 1983, when Chicago elected Harold Washington, the first black mayor of Chicago, when Harold Washington came to power, that sent a message to cities across the country that you could have a transformational politics. The Harold Washington win in 1983 laid the groundwork in many people's minds for the Rainbow Coalition candidacies of Jesse Jackson in 1984 and 1988 for the presidency. So Chicago, because of its deep political character and because it's going to be such a defining race for where the Democratic Party is going on criminal justice issues, on economic issues, on education and more, Chicago is a city that tends to send big messages as regards urban politics in America. If Brandon Johnson wins, that is a dramatic message. And I think it's very close to, my apologies, people call in with election stuff, but it's very close to as significant as Wisconsin. And I'll say one other thing. If Paul Vallis wins, our national media, which so often errs on the side of celebrating neoliberalism and conservative approaches, especially within the Democratic Party, our national media will claim
that's going to be a narrative that we hear across in the same way that Eric Adams sort of created this sort of crime, sort of a fictional crime issue.
So it's very, excuse me, it's very important what's happening in Chicago. And what I say to people about today is, I know you're going to watch a lot of Trump. I understand that. But what I say is keep a very close eye on Wisconsin, because it could be a transformative result as regards our national politics. And keep a very, very close eye on Chicago, because it could be a hugely transformational race and result, not just for our national politics, but for urban policy in America and how our cities deal with some of these really challenging issues. I find this, I will tell you right now, I think this is the biggest night in politics in 2023.
Wow. John Nichols, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine. Always a pleasure, John. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
It's an honor to be with you both. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Good luck today.
Thanks.
All right, folks. We're going to head into the... we have something to show.
Oh.
We have a new limited run in our merch shop.
Do we?
Yes. Check this out. Pop that up. Let's take a look at this. That's right. Yes. The effing dork tribute shirt. This is, I think we have left his best on the back, if I'm not mistaken, on these shirts. But the effing dork, this of course is what Joe Rogan referred to me as when I was calling for more or less confiscatory taxes above $3 million. Every dollar that you make over $3 million annually, 90% of it would be taken away in taxes as an attempt to address the massive wealth inequality and the commensurate political inequality that we get from it. And I have often thought of myself as more of a nerd, but really sometimes a geek. And dork, I don't think so, but if that's what it takes, there it is. The shirt is available at shop.majorityreportradio.com.
Well, we acted quickly on that. Good for us.
Yep, we moved. We moved on that. Julie really got on it. Folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the free half free of commercials, you get the fun half, and you get the ability to IM on the fun half live. If you're a member, you just pick up the app at majorityapp.com. Also, you allow this show to survive and thrive. Don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. They're based in Madison, Wisconsin. They were handing out coffee. John and I were talking about, 12 years ago, there was the massive protests at the state capitol. Over the course of weeks and weeks, there were protests, and Just Coffee was out there giving free coffee to people when it was freezing cold. It gets a little chilly in Wisconsin. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but Madison gets a little bit chilly, and they were handing out free coffee. It's co-op. They are movement partners, so check them out. JustCoffee.coop, and don't forget. You can buy the Majority Report blend, which is, if I have to say so myself, the best blend. So.
I hear that.
ESPN, what did you guys talk about last night?
Well, big story in sports, professional sport, or actually college sports, but I think this is really putting women's basketball on the map, plus this quality of players just really coming out of college right now is incredible. Ashley Reese triggering right-wingers like Dave Portnoy. Angel Reese, I apologize. Angel Reese triggering Portnoy and others. Is Jeff Bezos trying to twist arms at the NFL to make Thursday Night Football even worse for players? And are the Dallas Mavericks tanking, and why are Bradley and I mad about it? YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt is still on grand jury duty, but Left Reckoning is trucking along, and he'll be up there. So check that out. Also, don't forget our TikTok. Majority Report FM is our TikTok. People are loving it. AM Quickie, of course, amquickie.com. You can sign up for that. We've got YouTube shorts. All these things, too, are designed for you to, find, spread the word of the program in whatever medium, people, your friends, some people have friends who are all on TikTok. Some people have friends who are all on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Some like to read stuff. So go at it, folks.
Yeah, it's funny, the generational divide. None of my friends are on TikTok. My sister's 3 years younger than me, and all she cares about is TikTok. And I feel like that's the entire, half of that. But I got TikTok just to follow our account, and such good stuff. The format really is informative. It's quick, and kudos to our team doing that stuff. It's really great. So check that out for sure.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back, and the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back, and the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back. back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back, 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 back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back, 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 back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back, back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black African. And the alpha males are black, 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 black. And the Africans are back, 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 back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck them. Fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black. Alpha males are black, black. Africans are back, back.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Emma will be joining us in just a second. Let's go to some IMs. Judy Gold's solo comedy show in New York City gets a rave review in yesterday's New York Times, packed with laughs. Oh, I didn't see that. That's exciting. I've been meaning to go. Shoot.